Okay, so today we are going to look at adding and subtracting mixed numbers. However, we're going to do that with positive and with negative numbers. So the last video was on just adding and subtracting mixed numbers where they're only positive. Now I have positives and negatives. So in order to do this, the rules of positive and negative numbers will apply. So if they're the same sign, you're going to add. If they're different signs, you subtract, and I take the sign with the greater force. Alright, and also what has to stay constant is you must get a common denominator, and that makes equal parts. So here I have a negative 5 1/2 minus 8 2/3. Now previously we've talked about that minus 8 2/3, a minus sign and a negative sign are the same thing. You can never tell the difference because they mean the same thing. So subtracting actually makes this into a negative number. So I have a negative 5 1/2 and a negative 8 2/3. I got to add those together. Now you see I have a 2 for a denominator and a 3 for a denominator. Doesn't work. I need to get equal parts. So 2 and 3 can both go into 6, right? 2, 4, 6, and then 3, 6. That's the lowest common multiple. So that is my common denominator. So I would say negative 5, and how many out of 6? Well, 2 times 1, 2, 3 makes 6. So I did times 3. 1 times 3 makes 3. 3, 6. 3 is half of 6. Half. Makes sense. Plus a negative 8 1/6. Well, that's times 2. 3 times 2 makes 6. So 2 times 2 makes 4. I have two negative numbers, so I could simply add them together. 3 6 plus 4 6 makes 7 6. 5 and 8 is going to make 13. So I have negative 13 7 6. But you'll notice this is an improper fraction. So that's 7 6. That means 7 divided by 6. 6 goes into 7 one time with 1 left over out of 6. Right? If I set it up, 7 divided by 6, 6 goes in once, giving me 1 left over. So I have to add this into there. So 13, negative 13 plus a negative 1 1/6 makes negative 14 1/6. Two negatives, I have the same sign, I add them together. A different one you might see is if one is positive and one is negative. So let's say a negative 2 and we'll say 3 eighths plus 4 and we'll say 5 6. Okay, so I have a negative 2 3 eighths plus 4 and 5 6. Again, I'm looking for a common denominator because these do not have equal size parts right now, and I need equal size parts if I'm going to add and subtract from each other. So 8 and 6 both could make a 24, so that's a negative 2. That's times 3 to get me to 24. 3 times 3 is going to make 9. Plus 4, and I want to get 24 as my denominator. 6 times 4 makes 24, so 5 and 20. Okay, now I need to look at this and decide, well, I started with a negative and I have a positive. I need to subtract them, but I need to look at which is further from 0, and this one's further from 0. It has a greater force, so it's going to go on top, and it's going to determine if my answer is positive or negative. There's more positives than negatives, so I have to have a positive answer. 20 minus 9 is 11 over 24. 4 minus 2 is 2. Alright, let's look at one more possible problem, and this one we'll make it be 3 terms, so 3 parts together. let's say a negative 10 and 2/5 minus a negative 3 and 7/20 plus a 1 and 9/10. Alright, so I see 5, 20, and 10. Well, I want to get 20 for my denominator because 10 times 2 makes 20. This is already 20. 5 times 4 makes 20. The next thing I notice, subtracting a negative, you're taking away bad guys, right? You subtract something. When you subtract a negative, that means we're actually adding. So this becomes negative 10, and we want 20 for our denominator. 5 times 4 is going to make 20. 2 times 4 is going to make 8. So negative 10 and 8/20 plus 3 and 7/20. Well, I have a negative and a positive, so I have to subtract those numbers. 8 minus 7 is 1 out of 20. Negative 10 plus 3 would be 7, except it's a negative 7. 10 minus 3 makes 7, but I have more negatives. So this first part was negative 7 and 1/20. Okay, now I need to take this and make it into 20ths. 10 times 2 makes 20, so 9 times 2 makes 18. 1 and 18/20. Again, taking it piece by piece, it makes it much simpler than worrying about all of it at once. So negative 7 and 1/20 plus 1 and 18/20. Alright, one negative, one positive. I need to subtract them. So 1 and 18/20. Okay, well, 1 minus 18, you can't do it without getting a negative answer, so I'm going to need to go two routes. I can either borrow or I can go improper fraction route, and I'll show both ways. So this is a key step. I recognize I'm trying to take away more than I have. If I borrow, I'm going to borrow from the whole number. So if I take 1 from here, that becomes a negative 6. And then with this, the 1 whole I took, that would equal 20 out of 20, because 20 divided by 20 is 1. I chose 20 out of 20 because I got a denominator of 20. So I would add 20 plus the 1 makes 21 here. 21 over 20. 21 divided by 20 would be 1 and 1/20 plus the 6 makes the 7. So it is equal. 21 minus 18 makes 3 out of 20. Negative 6 and a positive 1 makes a negative 5. So negative 5 and 3/20. If I went the improper fraction route, negative 7 and 1/20, that would equal 20 times 7 is negative 140, plus another one would be negative 141 over 20. And then I have 20 times 1 is 20, plus 18 makes 38 over 20. So I got a negative and a positive, means I'm actually going to be subtracting. I would be moving right on the number line, but we're going to subtract 141 from 38. So 141 minus 38 is going to be 103, and 20 stays my denominator. Now my answer has to be a negative because I have more negatives, and you keep hearing me say that because you keep need to be asking yourself that question: is it positive, is it negative? 20 goes into 103 5 times, and if I wasn't sure about that, I could set it up like this: 103 divided by 20. 20 goes in there 5 times, giving me 100. There's 3 left over. So it's 5 and 3/5, but this is a negative answer, and it's the same thing. All 3 of these are the same. 3/20. All of these are the same answer. So negative 5 and 3/20. Yeah, 5 3/20.